Hey, we've got more blasts from the past in this episode next.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
I like this intro is like just simple and quick. And all right, here we go. Hey guys, yeah, we got a little flash. All right, welcome back. You were watching the after show for Better Call Saul. We're covering episode 4, Sabrosito, and we'll talk about what that means. I'm Rick Hong, and you can find me on all social media at Rick Hong, RICKHONG, and I'm joined by Steve Kaufmann.
Hey everybody, I'm Steve Kaufmann. You can find me on Twitter at Steve Kaufmann. That is Kaufmann. I thought I was gonna have a real witty, like, that's Esquire to you, sir. And I'm
Esquire.
Like, doesn't
Sure.
that fit the whole episode? That's the problem with such a good show. The after show, you're like the bar is just as high.
Yeah, okay.
That it's like that's Esquire to you, and there's 2 tapes, and it's late, guys.
It is late. It is late. All right, let's get to it. So Zach Wilson couldn't be here tonight, but you can find him at that Zach Wilson, and you can also find Lucretia Lyon at Lucretia Lyon because she's the only one on social media, as she always says.
There was a brief moment where I thought you were just guessing at her Twitter handle, and then you said it. That I was like, no, you're right. That's
her. Yeah, that's her thing.
Definitely her on Twitter.
Yeah, it's always her. I'm the only one.
Wait, is your Twitter handle also just your name?
It's just my name. Yeah.
So all 4 members of this panel.
Well, no, it's because Zach is that Zach Wilson, not to be confused with Zach Wilson or to be confused with this Zach Wilson.
So aside from Zach Wilson, who's that Zach Wilson, all of us have our full name in our Twitter handle.
Yeah, that's
on the show that covers law stuff. I get it, but I think we're the right group for this.
All right. We'll see. Oh, I don't know where, so you brought up the fact that it took how many minutes before Saul enters this?
It took 32 before we saw Kim, so it would be about 34 or 36 until we actually saw Saul.
Yeah, I'm so
didn't mind it.
Yeah, so I'm like kind of conflicted of where we should like kind of start the conversation, but I guess what's great about this show is the constant throwbacks to Breaking Bad.
Yeah. This episode I'd like to call Better Call Mike.
Better Call Mike, okay.
This is the Mike episode. And this isn't the first time this show has done a Mike episode. Mike is a central character to the Breaking Bad mythos, but definitely the Better Call Saul mythos. That for him to have his own episode like this makes complete sense to me.
It's interesting though, because when you watch him, this is what makes Jonathan Banks so great in this is he really doesn't have a lot of lines. It's just him kind of just very simple and just looking at somebody, and that's it.
Yeah, it's a very well written character and then an even better acted character.
Yes.
And it's one of those things that I've had acting teachers my whole life who tell you, like, you really have to do the work and here's why. And Jonathan Banks would be a great example of I don't believe there was a huge plan for him, just as I don't believe there was a huge plan for Saul Goodman on Breaking Bad.
Right.
But then they casted it so well, and then it was acted so well, that when they were writing more stuff, they were like, I can really see this character because he built it for us.
Jonathan Banks.
Yes, Jonathan Banks, and then obviously Bob Odenkirk built those 2 characters in a way that if the intention was only for like a one and done or maybe 2 or 3 episodes, it became its own series.
And I think we enjoy the fact that when they announced that this series was going to be happening, that Mike was going to be there too.
Definitely. Also, it was very interesting that this series got picked up for a season 2 before season 1 ever happened.
Which, it's always interesting to see how far along in the process they are, because clearly they haven't aired it.
Yeah.
But where, the network is, dude, we are all about this. We're all about that. All right, well, let's kind of just, I guess, jump into it. And before we jump into those guys, let's, as I was talking about the blast from the past, is we see Don Eladio. And I mean, it's cool to see the setting.
Yeah,
the setting,
the exact pool, the exact That whole part, like, and it was shot so distinctly both times that from that underwater shot they brought us in on this episode, I immediately remembered that scene from Breaking Bad.
Right. Okay. So yeah, when you're talking both times, you mean from right when we saw that in Breaking Bad,
Yes.
and we saw this. I was actually reading that house is actually in New Mexico, and it's actually on sale right now for just a little under $1 million, or somewhere around there. So if you want that house, you got $1 million. Anybody got $1 million? You can have that house and be like, hey, this was the house that
my LA mind just started churning. Like I could come up with that. I could telecommute.
Yeah, right.
I could telecommute. Come up with that.
I know what I like too is the even the color, the way that they colored. Whether it was the cinematographer or if it was in post, the color was just, it felt very Breaking Bad from when I watched it in Breaking Bad too. Like that's not only being the same location, but even the color is like, oh, this is great.
And yeah, and because the hue of the pool versus the brown of everything, and then the actual scene. What I enjoy about this is, like, I feel like when he was in the wheelchair in Breaking Bad, we kind of sided,
Hector Salamanca.
Yes, we kind of sided with Hector Salamanca over Gus Fring.
Well, because
they were both shades of gray, but so was the whole show. That, like, we shouldn't have been siding with Walt either. Like, they were all on some level just bad people. And it was actually funny, the one person who was, like, trying to be their best good in Breaking Bad was the wife, and people hated that she was. People hated the wife,
right?
Yeah, people hated that wife.
No. I mean, let's go to human nature for a second, though. If you have a guy that's physically capable of doing everything versus a person that's, in a wheelchair and can only just click a little bell. I mean, just by who we are as people, I think you'd almost have to be an asshole to not side with the guy that's like, that can't really move a lot or talk, or other than saying yes, no, and that's it.
And for Gus Fring, yeah. And I think for Gus Fring in Breaking Bad was, by that point, such a monster. Like, such a monster antagonist that we were like, yeah, anybody who could take this guy down, anybody who could help take this guy down, let's do it.
Fun fact, I don't know, how familiar are you with the movie Scarface?
Pretty familiar.
So you know that Eladio is Stephen Bauer, the actor who was the friend to Tony Montana, Al Pacino, and then Salamanca is towards the end of that movie. He's the guy that's like getting ready to set the bomb, and that's when Tony Montana's like, no way, because he sees the kids in the car and he blows them up. So I'm sitting there watching, I was like, oh man, it's like, there you go, you got old like Scarface, two guys in there. And
unrelated, if I were to give you $1 million cash right now, how would you like it? Do you want it rolled up in rubber bands, or do you want it saran wrapped?
See, that's it's not unrelated, because it's related to the story, and I actually like that question. It's a presentation thing, right? I mean, if it's $1 million, it's $1 million. I mean, so then do we start breaking it down by in hundreds and 500s and 20s and singles?
Like, I'm just saying there's two options. You can have it how Salamanca gave it.
Okay, rolled up,
still money, still counted, and you can pick it up and know reasonably that each roll is a certain amount of money, and then count the rolls. Or just giant saran wrapped brick. The bills are nice and clean.
Man, it's not like how I like my cocaine. My cocaine I like in bricks, right? But when it comes to money, I don't mind the rolls, because it's,
you like your money a little messy.
Yeah, I mean, well, they're in rolls, so you can just like grab it and take it to go. I mean, or imagine if the DEA or something shows up. I mean, taking that big brick is going to be a bitch, or you have to cut that thing open and take what you can. But with rolls, you can at least try to scoop it up and run out.
Well, I mean, if you have $1 million, I don't.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's like,
if people are giving you $1 million cash, I don't think you're ever going to have problems ever again.
No, and I mean, the way that I look at it too is it's either. I mean, I know it's you're just presenting a scenario, but like for me, I'm just like, dude, if it's $1 million, I'll take it any which way. Someone will give you in an envelope, in a big duffel bag, in a truck. How about you?
On the $1 million tip, yes, give it to me however you give it to me. Give it to me in pennies. I'll spend a week counting pennies if you're giving me $1 million.
This scenario and this conversation will lead to something towards the end of towards the end of like when I want to cover something. But keep going.
If you were to ask me how I want it, I would want it in nice, clean bricks. Nice, clean bricks where I can very much count up exactly how much it is without much fretting. Because even when you like dump it out, when you dump out like the little rolls that he had,
it can roll.
You would have to count each roll and like assume that they counted it up and then rubber band it right. Where if you just go, that's 100,000, that's 100,000, that's 100,000, like, oh, okay, this all stacks up. That's how I would want it. But I also don't like carrying that much cash. So for me, I would immediately take that to my bank or my money guy and just be like, here it is, it's all there. It's all there. I counted it in 3 seconds because somebody cared when they gave it to me. Jay Becker in the chat, I want it gift wrap the money in a gift box with a bow.
Yeah, what? Yeah, whatever.
Tales of the pre-sequel, but presentation is everything.
I was thinking the exact same thing. I mean, well, it was also a diss, right? Because I think that huge amount that he puts nicely put on the table equals to a lot more money than the rolls were.
Absolutely.
So you think that he's pissed off by the presentation or just the amount of, as we are with guys, the size?
Both. And the disrespect. Like, there was a certain level of... Because we talk about this a lot. I'm going to predict it. We're going to talk about this a lot with Gus Fring because he has a very... Like, his front was first. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but El Polo, he was a community... Like, he was a community pillar who was making chicken long before he was also a meth dealer for the cartel, specifically so he can come up with that infrastructure to like ship all the good meth and then pass the money up to the cartel so he doesn't have any problems with the cartel, which he doesn't. He has problems with his, I don't want to say it's not necessarily his competitor. If they're both paying, like if they're both a part of the cartel,
it's a little. You're right. It's a little. It's just. I guess it's just it's a competitive nature. Like they're just competitive, and clearly we know the reasons why there's animosity. But also, I'll flip it a little bit, and I'll pose you a different question. If you had your own drug front, would you want the car wash? Would you want the Los Pollos Hermanos? Would you want a chicken place, or the ice cream place?
I want the arcade. I know it's not on the list, but
arcade. Well, I was thinking about
Walt was gonna get the arcade. That wouldn't have made sense for Walt. That would not have made sense for Walt. That would have absolutely made sense for me if it was like a Brunswick zone, like a bowling alley, laser tag, arcade, bar, restaurant. Like if tomorrow I told you like, hey man, I'm buying a Brunswick zone in Alhambra. That's my life now. You would never think, I think he's getting into drugs. You would be like, no, I think he likes
arcades.
Yeah, I think he likes bar games. It's probably darts and pool, and like that would just fit my personality, and that would be, I would genuinely enjoy just running a huge entertainment center like that. But that would be an awesome drug front. If we're just thinking, because it would be two parts. One, it would have to be a massive business that ships a lot. So I guess I would have to own the Brunswick zone, like I would have to own my chain of Brunswick zones.
Dude, you're going to now you got chain. You have a whole chain of places.
But like similar to Los Pollos Hermanos, like you have to have, because the reason he's so successful is because he's shipping all the things that you need to run a fast food place, and he's shipping them across multiple distribution zones, and the infrastructure is set legally, and then he can set the price for the driver, and then he can hide the stuff in the stuff. So if you're looking for a really good drug front, that would be the way. If you're asking, am I street, would I want to open up a Orange Julius that would last 6 months and then try to do something else? No, that's not my style.
Okay.
I'd rather not. What does your drug front look like? I've revealed I've given this too much thought.
Whatever, because I mean it's gonna relate to some stuff that we're talking about. But because I thought about it, I'm like, okay, because I think about Saul, or not Saul, but dude, what's Saul's name when he's in
Jimmy.
Omaha?
Or
I'm blanking at. Okay, so
he's got
he's at Cinnabon.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be at Cinnabon because Cinnabon smells like you'd reek of
nothing at a mall.
Yeah, and so then
A food place in a mall, no.
Okay, then the fried chicken place, you smell like fried chicken all the time. You come home, you smell like fried chicken.
Well, yeah, and the margin on that, like, as a business, the margin on that stuff isn't great. And then, like, also if you have a team of employees like that, you have to treat them right. You have to treat them right, and if you're in the cartel business, your job isn't necessarily to treat people right.
So I'm thinking the safest place is ice cream because you got kids there all the time coming through.
Mm-hmm.
So who thinks that and you don't smell like grease.
Yeah.
And you probably have some bum like high schoolers that you can just that'll rotate themselves out of there every few months, few weeks, few years, so you don't have to worry about the burden of someone catching on to like what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
And they're dumb, because they're dumb enough.
By the way, he's Gene at the Cinnabon. A couple people in the chat.
Oh, okay. Thank you, guys.
Matthew Mastian says a nail salon. That's actually a really good. It's a really good drug front. Also, a
Who said nail salon? Is it because I'm Korean? Is that you said nail salon? Is that?
I don't. I think you're bringing your own stuff to this.
No, I'm kidding.
Also, I might be revealing a little much about my neighborhood, but not convenience stores per se, but like tiny drugstores that are only open like 2-3 hours a day. Those are obviously drug fronts,
right?
They've been open, like they've existed for 20 years, and you're like, how do they afford rent? They're open like never.
it's like, yeah, dude. It's like, where's right? It's like, how are they not evicted?
If a person walking down the street, if a person walking by it more than once can figure out it's a drug front, it's probably a really bad drug front.
True. Well, I mean, so this is where it leads us to where. So now Salamanca's really pissed off.
Yeah.
So he actually shows up at the Los Pollos Hermanos, and the place is run by, I don't even know how old that manager guy is, and he's like
Lyle.
Gus.
Lyle, not Kyle, was just perfect. Like, why? I have a feeling there was a first draft where his name was Kyle, and somebody went, no, his name's Lyle.
Well, they're in Mexico. Who knows?
Lyle makes more sense.
Sure.
That guy had to be like maybe 20.
Well, if you were not if you were Lyle, but if you're a customer and you see that stuff going on, what's your first instinct? To leave?
Leave.
And
Absolutely.
granted, nobody got hurt, but
I mean, I'm also the type to like headphones in, not pay attention to the world around me. But if I'm noticing, this doesn't look safe, I should leave.
what was your initial thoughts? Because like in my mind, I was thinking someone is going to get hurt. I don't know if you felt that way.
I didn't feel that way because that would have been too far, especially because all of his employees are civilians from Lyle all the way down. If they did anything beyond what they did, the police would get called. And then it would be the assistant manager of the Los Pollos Hermanos. It was breaking and entering. It was breaking and entering. Thank you so much for coming. You should lock all these people up.
It's
you could argue, and I like that tiny moment where the first group to leave, the mom and the son, and they try to leave, and the guy blocks the door, and the other guy's like, no.
This is awesome. Tyler Robley says, "I thought a Pulp Fiction was going to go down." I love that.
But that would have been, which is interesting because he clearly didn't want to ruin Gustavo's business either.
Well, it's interesting because
one shootout at a Los Pollos Hermanos, no one will ever go to at the very least that Los Pollos Hermanos, in spite of how rare it would be. Like, there's a Jack in the Box by my house where somebody got like hit with a machete by a crazy person on the street in front of that Jack in the Box, like sliced 3 people up with a machete.
Yeah, nobody wants to go. Nobody wants to go back there.
And I know it's against all logic, but I haven't been anywhere near that Jack in the Box ever since that happened.
How about Jack in the Box in general when they had like this bad food poisoning thing?
Well, that too.
Okay.
Well, way back when they were known for like terrible food.
Yeah.
Which is sad because do you want to know that like the 5 years after that incident, who had the best track record for food handling? It was Jack in the Box for like 5 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then it was back to Disney because Disney just throws money.
Someone brought this up to me as I was watching that it was because you brought it up yourself. So when we see Hector and Gus talking, there's almost like a sense of honor with Gus where he's telling Hector, by the way, we're criminals. We're bad people. However, you come into my place and these are innocent, like you were saying, they're civilians.
Yes, these are both my customers and my employees. Have nothing to do with this.
Yeah, it's like you can fuck with me if you want to. That's fine.
And like, I don't mean the guy who drives my truck. I don't mean my muscle. Which, if it's not Mike, it's gonna be Mike. Like, I don't mean my scuzzy lawyer. I mean Lyle. Lyle is a civilian. He's going to college. He's gonna be a doctor. I have high hopes for Lyle.
Okay.
Those customers are my customers.
He is a manager, so he can very well be a doctor. You're right.
He's just working his way through medical school.
Yeah, all right.
But and I do like that honor among thieves thing, which I do not think Hector understands, because I don't think the front at that, it wasn't an orange stand. It was what is Hector's front? Because Hector had a bobblehead from his front.
Oh, it was called the Greek. Hold on.
Yes.
Hold on. It's the winning Greek. Yeah. It's like his whole thing is ice cream.
Yeah. So, but I guarantee you, the guy actually scooping the ice cream at the winning Greek isn't a complete 100% civilian. Like everyone who works for Los Pollos Hermanos, like a physical chain store of a Los Pollos Hermanos, they think they just work at a store.
Just like we saw when in Breaking Bad, where Walt shows up and he's like, "Dude, I see nobody sketchy. I don't understand what's going on here. It's like, why am I at this place when everything looks completely legit?"
Yeah, this looks like an absolute legit place. Whereas, I don't want to say it's a terrible drug front, but I have a feeling if I walked by this ice cream shop more than twice, one of my thoughts would be, "This is probably a drug front."
There's something sketch there.
Because either the ice cream will be too expensive for anyone to ever actually buy it, or so cheap that they can't possibly make a profit. I've lived around a lot of drug fronts, guys. I know the pricing. Sometimes they have good hot dogs.
You're talking. Oh man, I think you were talking about the same place actually. I mean, so is it too far? I mean, would you feel insulted? I mean, of course you would, but it just he puts the shoe
like
up,
the pure power move,
and he's like scraping the shoe. It's like I think that's a little good nuance of hey, F you.
But I do love what Gilligan's doing here. That between Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, there's a complete flip. That in Breaking Bad we sided more with Hector, whereas in Better Call Saul we side more with Gus.
True.
When in reality, neither of them.
Yeah, it's like you were saying. They're both bad people, so it's not really.
They're both profiteering off of suffering, whether it's the pain and suffering that a cartel brings about as like straight up violence, or just the pain and suffering of drug addiction. Like they're all profiteering on that suffering, on a thing that's legitimately against the law.
So what do you think? Okay, so you're an employee there. Mm-hmm. You're an employee there. You see this muscle come in, and granted, Gus was generous. He said, "Hey, you guys get full pay,
24 hour."
Well, initially, I think he said you're paid for the rest of the day.
Yeah, you're paid for the rest of the day.
Shift.
Please leave. And the clock on the wall said like 12:30. So they're making buco bucks for that day because you get to go home at noon and you get paid. I'd imagine,
depending what their shifts are.
Although I guess Lyle had to call a bunch of people. Because there's no way they were working like open to close. Like it was the same crew working open to close. I think Lyle had to call a bunch of people, and then, although leave it to me to find the funny things. Lyle had to go home and immediately call a bunch of people and tell them, "Don't come in, we're closed today." But I really need that. You're gonna get paid. Gus says you're gonna be fine. Just don't come in. And then the next day, Gus gathers everyone around. There's no way it was all the same crew. So there was at least one person in that group, or should have been one person in that group that wasn't there the day before.
And gets to profit the 24-hour overtime salary.
Or just get to hear this big long speech about like I wasn't here yesterday, guys. What happened?
Well, so
And then by that same logic, there should have been someone there, not there, the next day that was there the day before that missed the whole speech, where somebody's gonna have to, like, Lyle's gonna have to call him and like, well, Gus was in a bad part of town and he had to pay these guys, and then these guys came in and like.
Well, I mean, so I know that it's television. What did you think of the speech? Did you? I mean, if you're in that situation, you come back, your boss kind of tells you the story. Do you just sit there and say, "Okay, great, I got paid. You know, this isn't a permanent job for me. I'm not trying. You know, and
Even if it was a permanent job for me, because fast food restaurants in today's America, like, that is kind of a this is a decent gig. This is a decent gig. I'm good. Like
you would have believed the story, and you would have thought.
I would have absolutely believed the story, especially from Gus. Because I have no, like, if it were a shady person, which, by the way, are most of the people who run large chain fast food restaurants, I would have a feeling like, I don't think he's being 100% truthful with me. Whereas with Gus, he is such a fine, upstanding citizen, through and through, a wonderful leader, that I wouldn't have thought twice about that story. I would have been like, no, he's
legit. He's
ashamed to have paid this protection money at all, and he stood his ground.
He always comes off very sincere.
Me, I would be concerned. I would be concerned for my safety working there.
So I was thinking, would you put your 2 weeks in?
Why would I put if I wanted to leave, I'd leave. I had 2 weeks at a fast food restaurant. What are we?
Dude, there's principles, man. There's principles.
You could give me
I mean,
2
if someone
weeks.
calls up Gus Ring for a reference, I mean, there's principles. 2 weeks. I mean, okay, so you would theoretically, you'd believe the story,
If you
but you
put
would
a
say,
place, why would you list them as a reference? I'm lost. How do you get jobs? What? Like,
no. You give you 2 weeks and you list Los Pollos Hermanos, and they say, well, why did you leave? And say like, oh, I had some safety concerns.
that's way too much information.
I mean, okay, we're reading a little too much into it,
But like Los Pollos Hermanos, why did you leave? Because it was Los Pollos. Why are you asking me that question? It's Los
you're
Pollos
right.
Hermanos.
You're right.
Like, what? I'm trying to be a tier 3 IT professional. Why are you asking me about?
It's a chicken place.
Why
I
are
can
you
only
asking me
move
about
up
the
so much.
The chicken place, like.
Lyle had my job. I wasn't going to be Lyle.
Like, if you want the resume, if you want the professional job interview answer to that question, it would be, I feel like they've exhausted my skills there, and I feel at your company I have a better chance to give all of myself and contribute to the team. That's the resume answer.
Okay.
That's the professional answer to, it was a chicken place. What are you talking about?
You're right.
I have a business.
You're right. I'm thinking about way too much.
I think I need to develop an app called the Business Translator.
But you definitely, but you like the, because that's what I was thinking when everything went down. I was thinking, what is he gonna tell his employees happened? How is he gonna explain this so that they don't like come cops, so they don't flip out,
So they don't talk. So they don't like.
Because he's not gonna like all of a sudden just wipe them out.
No. Well, that's not his style either, to like fire everybody. Like, once again, if those were his cartel people, if those were his illegal, not legit, not civilian people,
Like you feel with the Greek, the winning Greek.
like but how Gus does business though. If Gus was doing, if those were all criminals, those weren't civilians, those were all criminals, and they happen to have been in this crossfire, he would have had no problem. I don't know about 7 or 8 of them in this kind of scenario, but if it was a similar scenario where 7 or 8 of them know too much, but they were all criminals and they're all working for him on the criminal side of his organization, he would have no problem killing them.
Right, because he knows that they could be expendable.
He had no problem using a high school chemistry teacher for however long with the full intention of killing him. Like that, once you cross that line to be a criminal, the bets are different. The game is different. But at least he keeps that honor of, if you're a civilian, if you're my civilian employee, business is business.
Yeah, so I mean, there is a theme with this episode in terms of honor. You brought the word honor, and Gus has his honor to say that although I'm a criminal, there is a line not to be crossed because my employees are civilians.
And I'm not even saying that's a moral reason. That I wouldn't be shocked if I wouldn't be shocked if you really dove into Gus's psyche, that that's just a business reason. I'm fine. But that's just a pure business reason for Gus, that it's, well, no, if I treat the employees at my drug front well, they treat my customers well, I create a good product. If I create a good product, no one inspects the trucks of a good product.
I mean, so like, okay, so I want to keep talking about at least my version of what I think honor is, or the theme of, I mean, like, you know, take it for what it is. But when we talk about Mike, you know, Mike's in that booth and he's thrown a big, you know, nice lunch bag of cash.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't want it, which later on brings Gus back out, you know, and Gus is having a conversation with him about it, saying, okay, so your principle or your honor thing is you don't need the money, although like he was almost being rewarded, saying thank you for helping me out.
That was interesting, because he doesn't need the money. Like, that wasn't...
He always... But Mike, I think he would need the money. I mean, he was given a lot of money, but having extra money wouldn't be... Like, he himself, no. But now he's thinking about it, and maybe that's why there was a little throwback to... remember that Mike's motivation is not for himself, but it's about his widowed daughter-in-law and his granddaughter.
Well, that's definitely true of Mike, that everything's about his granddaughter. But I think he said it best in very little, because that's his character, that I didn't want to collect money to a certain extent. I feel like he felt he was making it right for that the innocent guy that got killed. For the innocent guy that got killed. For no other reason than he felt he had to take a shot at for no other reason that he felt he had to take a shot at the cartel.
Yeah, he says, like, I'm good.
That it's like, yeah, that innocent guy got killed, kind of sort of because of me, but also because of these guys, and now I made it good that, like, that truck's not on the road anymore. Like, in his mind, he's thinking a situation where an innocent died, I, at least for a little while, stopped the entire situation. Like, the truck that was making the run, that if you messed with the run, if you were an innocent person caught in the crossfire of that run, you just die. You just die because you know too much. And for better or worse, I think he knows that Gus wouldn't do that.
So then would you think of...
But he saw that as his payment, not the literal money. He had zero interest in the money in that instance.
Yeah, he wasn't he wasn't motivated by... Because like he wasn't motivated to do that because of money. But hey, it would be nice to have like a decent chunk of change.
Well, yeah. And I think he does further in the series. I also don't think he's a schlub. I think if he accepts money for gigs like that, if you will, he'll always be, although that's what he'll wind up doing anyway, but I think he wants to I think if he accepts money from Gus so quickly, then he becomes Gus's employee in the sense that, like, Mike's my muscle and he'll do anything I say.
So the offer comes up from Gus.
Yeah, the offer to work for me, and it wasn't, yes, absolutely, that sounds wonderful. It's like, well, it depends on the work.
Did you think there'd be a little bit more resistance first?
No.
I almost thought that happened a little too quick, like, okay, maybe, as opposed to not interested.
No, because it's still a negotiation with him. And I actually really, the more I think about the character of Mike, the more I think that throughout both series, he rarely runs into situations where he didn't do something that he was completely behind. I mean, later in Breaking Bad, obviously, the deeper he got, the more money was there, and then but then he made like a huge him and haw about how he was compromising his morals, whereas way early on here, it's like, I did that for me, like, I'm not even accepting a payment. And if you come to me tomorrow and say you want me to cap off 2 delivery drivers or go in and wreck an ice cream place, I'll weigh that against, A, do I think it's a good plan? B, do I think it's good for me? He's like a true independent contractor.
Yeah, true. And what I really, really liked was at least Gus finally revealing why he didn't want Salamanca dead, saying a bullet is
that was
bullet
nice.
is far too humane.
That was great. That I enjoy. I enjoy that, like, this is long-standing beef. Correct me if I'm wrong, did we ever find out how Hector Salamanca got in the wheel? I think I'm forgetting.
No. That's what this. Well, I guess we'll get that to a little bit later. But that's what this is all about. Is how Salamanca, how we end up seeing the wheelchair at Salamanca in Breaking Bad, like how it gets there.
I'm not crazy like that. We never saw any semblance of this in a flashback.
No.
In Breaking Bad.
No, and I think there was a scene earlier where you see when Gus is cleaning everything.
Yeah.
You know, when he's cleaning up the after those guys, after Salamanca leaves with his guys, he's cleaning up the mess, and you see that smirk on Gus's face.
Yeah.
I think that's the foreshadowing of, okay, I've got a plan for you.
And I also like the balling up the trash and throwing it perfectly into the trash can.
Yeah, it's like, who knew that he was a basketball player?
But, like, complete with a smirk. I think there was a level of, like, long game. I can still launch a 3 when I need to launch a 3. I'm not worried about catching boards per se. If you want to make a basketball analogy, like, I can launch a 3 whenever I want. I'm not worried about catching boards. Like, this is a board.
But you are.
It's 2 points.
Yeah, no. But you're on par. Like, right, they're having. As far as I'm concerned, unless someone in the chat wants to actually sit there and say that there was, yeah, I mean, okay, well, Tales of a Pre-Sequel says this, and it's true. In a Breaking Bad flashback, Hector killed Gus's friend, and that's definitely why Gus has animosity towards Hector. Absolutely, on that end. But
do we know that happened before this? Before Saul or after? It happened before Saul. Mm-hmm. Because it was like,
well, because the guy,
like, it was kind of his,
it was
absolutely his brother.
There's a couple things, because there's something that's said earlier.
Yeah.
And if you guys speak Spanish and you understand it, when Don Eladio is, when the money shows up, Hector under his breath says, "Los culos hermanos," which is like asshole or butt brothers.
Yeah.
I think it was like said in the subtitle. And so there's some. As I've been reading, there's some things where they talk about how Hector killed Gus's original partner for Los Pollos Hermanos.
Yes.
Then there's the whole thing of whether or not Gus is straight or gay. So like, that's why Los Culos Hermanos kind of has some sort of meaning of like butt brothers. Or I'm not saying this; it was in the script, so don't start attacking me on comments.
And that was implied for a while too. That I always thought he was a term I'm trying to get off the ground called Dumbledore gay.
Yeah, right.
Which is that he is sexually attracted to men, but he's asexual in the sense that he doesn't have sex with anyone very often. Like that outlet is his work, is his I call that Dumbledore gay because aside from Grindelwald, Dumbledore didn't really have lovers, and
I'm gonna start using that.
And it wasn't even clear that Grindelwald was a lover as much as it was a confidant and a friend. Grindelwald, who's played by Johnny Depp now. That's gonna all happen.
Wait, is that whatever? That's a different thing. Yeah, so like that's kind of, but going back, no, we have not yet seen, and I think that's what we're building towards. Hopefully we'll see it this season as how Hector Salamanca gets into that wheelchair. I mean, because like we're almost at mid-season. It's episode 4 now. Yeah. Next week is episode 5, and then there's like 10 episodes total. So there's plenty of time to play that story out or drag it into next season. But that's later. That's predictions and stuff. So where everybody wants us to be talking about is, and as you brought up, it took forever. So like I decided to do the same thing. Yeah. Seeing Saul and Kim and Chuck and Howard all kind of.
Well, this one felt like a giant setup though. Because, like, stuff happened, obviously, but at the same time, it's like the other shoe never actually dropped today. That, like, from last week, we actually just saw the actual scene of the plotting of last week, and we still don't know all the plotting. We don't know exactly what Mike did, like, what Mike's pictures are intended to do.
What'd you think of her going through? That
was good.
The phone book, right?
Yeah.
It's so bad because I mean I grew up with phone books, but it's just so funny to think not only like, okay, she's going through a phone book, but it's like, oh, that would make sense because Chuck is so crazy about technology. He's not going to Google are gonna phone, or I almost would think it'd be simpler just to have his assistant say,
well,
dude.
he said no. I think the phone book is still the public record. That would help, and I think, yeah, phone book is weird.
But it's cool. It was cool that it's in there. It's a cool like little thing to throw in there, and which I also see, which I also like, because as I've been complaining episode after episode after episode, I feel like Kim hasn't been doing much. Now I feel like she's really getting in there, and they're building her story arc to where I want it to be.
And it took me 3 phone calls to figure out what she was doing, and in those 3 phone calls, I felt really uncomfortable seeing an incompetent Kim. Because we didn't realize that the plan, her incompetence on the phone, was the plan up until she actually did it. That in my mind, I'm like, I don't know what. This doesn't read right to me. Just Kim being completely, oh my God, I'm just kind of calling. I don't know what's happening.
I was getting a little worried for her because
incompetent, lack of agency, like those first 3 phone calls before you figure out what exactly she's doing, like felt really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, right. And I was thinking, is she trying to solicit like new customers? You know, I mean, in terms of like calling, like, because that's what you would do, right? You cold call people,
and you would think, but you would also think, like, why would she be doing that when they have Francesca?
Exactly.
And that's all for the Jimmy side to begin with, because her side is Queso Verde.
This is what I've talked about, is that she's getting more and more distracted from her main client. You know, like Jimmy's like, oh, you're a genius for doing this. Like, how long was she like going through the phone book in terms of hours during the day? And that takes time.
Yeah, and Tyler Rodley in the chat brings up a good point that it was 2004-ish.
I think phone books are still usable.
That, like, phone books were still generally that your assistant might not just turn to Google first. So 2004, that was a lot. Like, I would have turned to Google, but I was years old.
Right,
in 2004.
No, but then it's genius because we see that they start screwing with Chuck and they send Mike.
Yeah.
You know, and Mike's doing his thing. And the funny thing about Mike is, at first I just sat there for a second. I was like, okay, this guy's like, he used to be a cop. I was like, does he know how to fix a door?
He strikes me as a really handy guy.
You know, I mean, he ends up being that, but at first I was like,
no, but he always strikes me as like above out. Like, there's some things homeowners just know how to do. Like, by and large, that's not even. He's the type of guy who could absolutely fix a door. Like a very handy person.
And then he's screwing with. It's as my girlfriend said, she talked about how what she really loved about this episode was it was like a team getting together. It was like almost like the A team.
Yeah.
You know, there was Kim and Jimmy, and now Mike's involved. And yeah, Mike's never met Chuck yet. You know, even when Jimmy's like, he's like, dude, so what'd you think of him? He's an asshole, right? And Mike's just like, eh. But he's screwing with him. He's like sitting there hitting the screwdriver and trying to get him upstairs, and then he pulls out the disposable camera and starts taking pictures. This is where the plan's unraveling, but I wasn't able to quite put the pieces together yet. I don't know if you were.
I think any discussion there is out of prediction, and I don't know if we're quite.
Okay,
we there?
No predictions yet. No predictions
we're not there yet. But I think anything about that is predictions, and I think it's left very ambiguous that it could go a couple different ways.
Cyber pleb. Hanging a door is pretty damn easy. Okay.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm not handy, I'm sorry. And then we see them all go to court.
Yeah.
With
settlement. They meet with the prosecutor in a boardroom, so it's not court.
Right.
They weren't meeting with the judge. That was the prosecutor. The prosecutor cut a deal. So, like, adjudication, it's not court. I don't know what it is.
So it looked like, to me, from the last episode to this episode, it looked like Jimmy and Kim had a plan to defend him. I didn't really feel at that stage that he was actually going to say, okay, I'm guilty, or I'm going to sign this thing. I thought like they were saying, like, these are the things presented to me. Yeah. We have a plan. I didn't actually know that it was him going to sign the papers.
I was expecting something this episode. Like, I was expecting something in this scene where he's like, well, actually, these photos mean you can't send that to the. But then the the authority of the prosecutor in that room shuts that down immediately. Like, that prosecutor makes him apologize. Which, like...
I don't know. That's what I was thinking. I was like, can you do that? I was like, can you sit there and say, like, you don't sound sincere or you don't have remorse, so why don't you sit there and...
I think
it's like, or what?
It's kind of like arguing balls and strikes, because what you want to say is, I'm sorry, are you a prosecutor or my mom? Like, you don't get to feel remorse here by the letter of the law, which is the thing we're all supposed to be following. But at the same time, if you're a defendant and the prosecutor's it's not like you're in court and the judge, like, you're the defendant and the prosecutor is giving you a deal. So the prosecutor can always take the deal away. So it's a little upset. Like, it's just that upsetting thing where some people, I don't want to say abuse authority, but some people feel that's how they can use their authority.
And yeah, it's like that's what I call parking maids.
Same thing. There's a certain level of I always call it balls and strikes. That there's time to challenge authority in the game of life. If the game of life were baseball, there's time to challenge authority. Outs, catches, fair, like in the game of baseball, as in life, ground rule doubles.
Yeah,
challenge those things. Balls and strikes. If you're unhappy that the umpire gets to make those calls every single time, then you're unhappy with life, because that's how it is. Don't argue balls and strikes.
So this is what I appreciated about the question that you asked me, because it relates to what I was going to say. I literally have it written here. So when they're talking about, okay, you owe me $321, and then he's like, no, actually it's $323.98. And he has his checkbook. That's when I'm like, if you know how much you're supposed to like owe somebody, that's when you bring things in quarters, pennies, and nickels, and say, oh, hey, here is, here's like so many quarters, here's so many pennies.
As someone currently taking someone else to court right now, that kind of blows my mind, because I've been told by lawyers, like, no, you can never change the amount. If you take someone to court over an amount, although this is a criminal trial, not a civil trial, so it's different, but it's a due process problem. If you take someone to court over $318, you can never say, well, actually it's $333.28. But I think, once again, they never went to court. It's the prosecutor within limits gets to run that whole room. But I also think he's setting up, by changing that amount at the last second, he's trying to set up an out of, like, so you've admitted to destroying the tape, even though your statement doesn't say it, which is interesting.
But yeah, that's what like my thing is. Like, I wouldn't bring a checkbook. I would bring bags of quarters or pennies and say, like, which denomination, and make it really small, just to be like, here, and make it really annoying for Chuck. Yeah. From Jimmy's side, as opposed to, here's just something really convenient, one little piece of paper. Granted, Jimmy would have had to bring that stuff in, but that's just me thinking. It's like, that's how I would screw with Chuck, just to say, oh yeah, that's how much I owe you. Okay, here it is.
And Chuck also revealed a bit of his plan later, which is a hearing board at the bar is different from a court case. Meaning, a loosely written statement and then a changed amount is a preponderance of evidence. If it's the bar, if it's the bar trying to decide if someone should stay a lawyer, the preponderance of evidence isn't nearly as strong, because the assumption of guilt is a little high. Like, essentially the assumption of guilt is a little higher because you're there, is my best understanding of these proceedings that we're going to see in the coming weeks.
And I don't know if this kind of seemed a little half and half, where they're like, aha, there is a double duplicate tape, but I think that's like basic, like 101 in movies or wherever. It's like you never like make one, you always have at least one copy. You like whatever it is, and if Chuck was going to implement that plan, it doesn't seem like it's this big haha, like, oh, there is another Jimmy. You didn't like ruin the only master copy.
Yeah,
I'd be like, dude, that's just a no-brainer. So it was a little weird that they were so, yes, there's a duplicate. I mean, because like I'm like, how many duplicates are there? I wouldn't just make one. I'd make.
Well, his plan was pretty clear. Like, it was all very clear that Jimmy came in and destroyed the duplicate. So the original still exists, and we can see from the previews next week that he's gonna play it. It's gonna get played. It's gonna get played because the bar is completely different from regular court.
Yeah.
It's gonna get vetted. It's admissible, party consent. All of these things happen in real court. If it's a trial among lawyers, it's like the rules are completely different.
So I guess let's do predictions.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. A Roswell, New Mexico reference back.
TV predictions.
So,
what do you think about? What do you think's gonna happen? Other than the previous that we saw, I mean, yeah, we saw a little bit, but it was kind of confusing. I mean, it clearly, yeah, they go to court or they go to the bar stuff. But
I think in the bar hearing, his soundest legal strategy would be to get the felony. Would get the felony, or at least challenge the felony enough within the realm of his statement. And they didn't give us all the wording of that statement, so I think more of that's going to come to light as it pertained to the photos. However, I don't understand the whole plan yet, and I think we're not supposed to. Yeah, and I think Mike's going to start working for Gus in the next 3-4 days, or 3-4 weeks, but that's not even a prediction. We all know that's happening.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're gonna wrap up the maybe drag it out for one more episode in terms of that's what I think too of the whole Jimmy bar thing.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly though I cannot say yet if he's gonna get disbarred or not. I can't
either.
Because at some point he's gonna turn into Saul Goodman.
Yeah.
So does it? I mean, that's my problem. Is it too soon if it happens now? Because something has to happen eventually, or is it too clever that he gets himself out of this, away from from Chuck?
It sucks either way in that sense. I think ending the 3rd season of Better Call Saul, where Jimmy McGill actually becomes Saul Goodman. On paper, if you had told us this before the series had ever started, we would have told you that would have been too long. But we don't, it's still the same character. We don't actually care. That I wouldn't be that ridiculous if he became Saul Goodman at the end of this season.
Yeah.
Because then we're talking season 4. He's actually a Slippin' Jimmy style attorney.
Yeah.
And once again, he never goes to court.
And I still
think he could get disbarred.
And I still think that Kim is slowly unraveling. I like where she's going. But I think she's unraveling where she's this is distracting too much of her business. So,
and she's associating herself. If he does get disbarred, she can't continue to associate her. If he does get disbarred, then he opens up essentially a law office as a different name. She can't be associating herself with that. On top of her goals and her morality is just so drastically different from his that it'll never actually work out unless somebody makes the change, and it's not going to be her.
Yeah. Well, what's cool is next week we're going to hopefully have Zach back and have Lucretia, so they'll be able to chime in on whatever they think about this episode and next week's episode, which brings us to mid-season. And Steve, where can everybody find you, and what other shows are you on?
They can find me right here, right now. But they can also find me on Twitter at Steve Kaufmann. That is Kaufmann. You can also find me on Snapchat, but I get real weird on Snapchat. I cover The Leftovers with Zach Wilson. I also cover Gotham on Mondays. And then I do this. I do a lot of other stuff that I tweet about.
And I'm Ray Kong. You can find me on all social media at Ray Kong. Currently, I do this. In a few weeks, I will be on Master of None, if you guys like that show off of Netflix. And we'll see you guys next week, hopefully with our full panel. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
See you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.